Hello ladies and gentlemen, Big Daddy Top Hat here. In the recent past on here we went on a crazy journey with me uploading individual deep dive videos covering the history of every single official Double Dragon release ever. The iconic franchise that would establish the cooperative beat 'em up genre. Linking to these legendary games, we are going to move our focus from Bimmy and Jimmy and instead over to one of the brand's most memorable characters. The muscle-bound, monstrous man specimen, Abobo, everyone's favourite violent criminal gang member. In 2012, the man they call Abobo would rather amusingly get to finally receive a game to call his own, which offers up one of the most hilarious and surreal gameplay experiences that I've ever come across in my life. So, join me today as we look back at the development of this title and what this seemingly ludicrous creation brought into the world. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the story of ABOBO'S Big Adventure, the ultimate tribute to the NES. Yeah! We have looked at many well-crafted, wacky fan projects on this channel over the years, but out of everything I've ever looked at before, a strong argument can be made that ABOBO'S Big Adventure perhaps takes the cake. While the Abobo within the Double Dragon franchise's role has been mostly restricted to beat 'em ups and fighting game appearances, this absurd game offers so much more. According to the developer's website known as ABOBO'sBigAdventure.com, the title was designed as a parody game which pays tribute to the 8-bit glory days of the Nintendo Entertainment System, thus meaning this fan project celebrates a certain console along with its gaming library's place in history, and it is not simply a Double Dragon fan game like the title may have you suspect. The development of the game began way back in 2002, when a man named Roger Barr set out to have Abobo, of all characters, fight his way through a variety of classic NES games in search of his lost son, who they comically named Aboboy. To make this strange but amazing plan a reality, Roger would team up with a programmer who went by the name Bane, and they started putting the first levels for the game together. Unfortunately, one of the reasons as to why the project took a decade to complete was due to the fact that the duo kept getting sidetracked, due to each of them working on other game projects at the same time, such as a game known as Domo-Kun Angry Smashfest. As all of this was unfolding, of course the ambitious Abobo project would stay on the back burner, with Roger always hoping to complete it eventually. Through the trials and tribulations that we call life, Roger was fortunate enough to meet other individuals who shared a love for classic 8-bit games, along with his own silly humour. Now with a bigger team, together they would start creating the Abobo game from scratch. Nick Pasto, the game's new programmer, worked up a whole new game system, and Pox of the Poxbox would recreate the existing graphics. In tandem to all of this, Roger developed a huge fleshed out story for Abobo to really dive into, spotlighting the character like he had never been before. This was a daunting project for all involved, but the team's energy and passion for this labour of love would mean they were able to pull through and deliver something pretty special. The group had set out with one very clear goal, and that was to turn ABOBO'S Big Adventure into the ultimate tribute to the Nintendo Entertainment System, a job of which I will admit they did a pretty spectacular job with. The game's introductory scene starts off with the opening theme from Mega Man 2 playing in the background, with text informing the player in the year 1985 the Nintendo Entertainment System was created. It brought much joy to people all around the world, but one NES character never got a chance to share his story. Until now. The screen then pans up the Statue of Liberty with an assortment of different sprites who have appeared in previous NES games flying past in the foreground. The camera eventually reaches the top to reveal the game's title, with Abobo being revealed to be hanging from the statue's headwear. Once players click start, Abobo literally dives into action to begin the game, but before full gameplay is underway, the opening stage starts off with a recreation scene of the Marion kidnapping screen from the original Double Dragon. In this instance, the traditional villains have been swapped out for other familiar NES sprites, and Marion herself has been swapped out for Abobo's son, Aboboy. The game's website explains that throughout the game, Abobo must fight his way through some of the greatest NES games of all time in order to rescue him. The page emphasises that Abobo's path will be a long and hard one, where he will encounter more enemies than any single character has ever had to fight. But this is Abobo we're talking about here. He has the heart of a lion, probably because he actually punched a lion and ate its heart. So now on his quest, Abobo must stop at nothing to save his beloved son, ready to unleash his rage in all new ways in this violent world against a cornucopia of pixelated foes. This game, that was originally released on Newgrounds.com on January 11th, 2012, can be enjoyed on both Mac and PC, and is compatible with either a keyboard or gamepad, with the opening stage placing our lunatic of a playable character within his familiar Double Dragon environment. This first stage alone offers a strong demonstration of the wackiness that is in store, with Abobo whipping his way through Mission 1 on a rampage to rescue his kidnapped loved one. Players start off by taking on Double Dragon enemies, but things get very silly very quickly, with Abobo punching Ransomling's head cleanly off his body. As promised, the game is instantly a love letter to the NES, with a variety of nostalgic opponents popping up all over the place, from Goombas to even a confrontation with a barrel-throwing Donkey Kong, who once defeated results in Donkey Kong Jr. breaking into tears. Abobo can even stumble into the cast of the Mario Brothers, enjoying, or at least experiencing, a BDSM party, with dominatrix Linda informing Abobo that he has to leave as it's a private function, whipping him back to the main stage. It is also of note that Abobo is equipped with a rage meter, which he can fill up by successfully landing attacks. Having this gauge full allows him to unleash bespoke special rage attacks, unique to each environment. After experiencing a small taste of the ridiculousness that this game brings to the table, the first stage ends with a boss encounter against the machine gun wielding maniac, who functions as the final opponent in the early Double Dragon games. After lowering Machine Gun Willie's HP down to nothing, Bimmy manages to hurtle into the villain, impaling him with a forklift truck. While the villain explodes in a pool of his own blood, the blast knocks Abobo into the pit to the right of the screen, placing him in a place of confinement as music from The Goonies 2 blares in the background. Not knowing what to do with himself, this extremely sexy man decides to eat the rotten food on the floor, leading to food poisoning, requiring him to take a massive dump. The diarrhea explosion launches the bodybuilder up into the air, with him upon landing falling into the toilet, down into the sewers below. This leads to the game's first paradigm shift in gameplay, which sees Abobo comically swimming through the treacherous waters of an underwater style setting, like those of which that can be found in the first Super Mario Bros. Game. Down here, once again, there is a nostalgia with every stroke, including multiple villains to take down who popped up back in the Mega Man franchise. Abobo's main method of attack down here is gulping and spitting out enemies Yoshi style. There is also a bizarre moment where if Abobo goes through a Doki Doki Panic-like door, he can impregnate a mermaid in an RPG-like scene. The Mabobos who are born from this can then be utilised as a power-up. While at times it may sound like I am making this stuff up, I can happily report that the wackiness in this game is off the scale, offering laughs at every turn. The end stage boss fight is a perfect example of this, where at first it seems Abobo must face off against Jaws, but instead partway through the fight, Jaws gets chomped by a bigger, more powerful shark. As they say in Star Wars Episode 1, there's always a bigger fish, and in this game's case, a shark with a freaking laser beam on its head. A surprise to be sure, but a welcome one. Next, Abobo finds himself within the world of Urban Champion, as players get the opportunity to face off against opponents in front of a discount brothel. Abobo even gets to perform his first Mortal Kombat style fatality here, or even a friendship if he fancies. Mixing the gameplay up the most as of yet, Abobo finds himself down in a Legend of Zelda style dungeon, switching the paradigm play of the game to be experienced from a top-down perspective. The sprawling area is a huge dungeon, just like what could be found in the original game. But upon acquiring a map, the revelation is revealed that the entire area is in the shape of a massive Johnson. Truly ridiculous. Players within this sprawling maze have the opportunity to execute Toad after he informs them that the princess is in another castle, but the true magic comes from the classic Zelda character known as the Old Man. Another NPC at one point reveals to the character that the Old Man doesn't like beef, with beef being the treasure that could be found within this labyrinth. Giving the Old Man beef sees him unleash a flurry of magical fury onto the player, but if his magic barrier can be penetrated, Abobo soon learns that it is not even his final form, In the first ever game where players must fight the old man from Zelda, he has the power to transform into a huge, hulking beast, further emphasising that we must always expect the unexpected in Abobo's big adventure. Defeating him sees him receive a trifle shard that he proceeds to eat, insisting that pie is tasty. While this is happening, Abobo hears cries from the basement, where he finds who seems to be a Boboy being held captive. After the two are joyously reunited, it is revealed that this was all a ruse, with the boy transforming into Amazon of all characters, from NES Pro Wrestling. Abobo attaches some balloons on his back and action is brought to the skies in the style of, well, balloon fight, where various aerial foe must be contended with. After the long chase against Amazon comes to a close, Abobo gets his chance to face off against him in a total bloodbath at the NES Pro Wrestling Arena. The end of this epic encounter even sees Abobo summon the Ultimate Warrior, Rowdy Roddy Piper, The Undertaker, and Hulk Hogan, who all proceed to utilise their finishing manoeuvres against Amazon before Abobo finally finishes the job. Abobo's rage is so devastating that he smashes Amazon through the ring, impaling the wrestler on the spikes down below. This then sees Abobo take on the role of Mega Bobo as he rampages through a Mega Man style setting against plenty of iconic enemies from NES's past. There are too many cameos to mention for all of this as usual, but the level culminates with a boss fight against Robo-Bobo, who after murdering Dr. Wily and being beaten transforms into the more challenging Mecha Bobo, the true final opponent of the stage. Abobo manages to uncover physical plans held within the robot's body, revealing that the creation was designed to stop him, proceeding through the jungle. With the failure of these plans, this then sees Abobo lace up his boots and place a bandana at the top of his head as he begins to fight his way through the world of Probotector. Or Contra, I guess, as you Americans seem to call it. After much run and gun glory and more trippy action, players must complete a boss fight against Krang from the Ninja Turtles, who once defeated is swallowed by Kirby, with Kirby stealing his mech suit. Kirby, who is now amusingly in Krang's seat, a sentence I never felt I would ever need to say, grows to a massive size, throwing everything at Abobo trying to defeat him. Another nice touch is if a player is KO'd in this section of the game, they have a time limit to perform the Konami code, so that the action can immediately continue. It's touches like this among it all that make this experience all the more special. After a vertical scrolling section, players must take on an even bigger, more dangerous Kirby, where he functions as the largest and most over-the-top boss fight yet. The game is constantly hilarious, although I must admit at points I feel I am in some sort of fever dream, even talking about this thing. His defeat sees him vomit up tons of classic NES sprites, with the final of these being Doc Lewis from Punch-Out! This leads to an unexpected cutscene where the Doc warns Abobo that after he finished training Little Mac, he went power crazy and began using his skills for evil. After seeing a number of flashbacks of him killing other NES characters, Doc reveals that Little Mac is the one who has kidnapped his son, all as part of his efforts to prove once and for all that nobody can beat Little Mac within the world of NES. Doc informs Abobo that his only hope of beating Mac is through Doc's training program, so after agreeing to the idea, a Punch-Out training scene commences. This then brings Abobo to the final showdown against Little Mac. However, what is different from a normal Punch-Out bout is that players now find themselves standing in a position in which an enemy opponent is usually placed, meaning players have to quickly get used to playing a Punch-Out like stage from a completely new perspective. Very innovative. After Abobo seemingly manages to defeat Little Mac, in what seems to be the boxing match of the century, Mac uses a Super Mario question mark block to consume multiple NES power-ups all at the same time. This allows him to transform into an all-new, much more challenging form, Big Mac, a fighter who looks more roided up than even Ivan Drago himself. If players can finally defeat Big Mac, perhaps the greatest video game ending ever unfolds, which begins as Abobo punches Mac's head squarely off his body using the Power Glove, which the game even proclaims is so bad. Blood and guts fly as Doc tells players to join the Nintendo fan club today, with the head flying from video game to video game, resulted in some of the best cameos as of yet. This pure amazingness ends with his head being impaled on a Super Mario Bros. Flagpole, as Abobo celebrates reunited with his son in the ring. Scenes of joy and a victory celebration take place before Abobo and Aboboy take the decision to massacre many of the iconic NES characters in attendance. Even Captain N isn't safe here, but at least like in Super Mario Bros. 2, the entire thing is revealed to be just a dream, so I was not far off with my Fever Dream comparison earlier along. Even this part of the game is amazing, as where all of the characters are credited like in Mario Bros. 2, in this game tons upon tons of the characters are brilliantly placed on the list who were never even in the game to begin with. The whole thing is freaking genius. As one would expect, this spectacular game was very well received by those who experienced it, with the game winning the Newgrounds Game of the Year award in 2012. GameSpy referred to it as the mother of all 8-bit homage flash video games, with Eurogamer referring to it as a Game of the Year contender as well. GameSpot praised the game, saying it's a labour of love that's jam-packed with a staggering number of pitch-perfect references to NES games. It doesn't just duplicate the sprites, environments and music of so many NES games, it also captures the simple but challenging gameplay of the games it imitates. And perhaps this game's biggest compliment came from an unlikely source. The creator of Double Dragon and cooperative beat-em-ups as we know them, Yoshihisa Kishimoto himself, who would state that he loved the game and supports the team's efforts. If that is not a recommendation to play this one, I don't know what else could be. Abobo's Big Adventure truly is a magnificent beast, which in my opinion is not just the ultimate NES tribute, but an amazingly inventive original game in its own right. Just wow. So, ladies and gentlemen, that was the story of Abobo's Big Adventure. If you enjoyed this video, as I mentioned earlier, I have made individual retrospectives on all 14 of the mainline Double Dragon games. And if you look at something a little more quirky, maybe you'd like to watch my recent video I made which covered a Double Dragon fan game which was made to look like the original arcade title, but instead a 4-player cooperative game using characters from WWF Superstars. Bloody awesome. As always, make sure you subscribe, hit that notification bell, leave a comment down below. You know all the things YouTubers normally tell people to do. And what I'd like to do in closing is mention that this channel is partially funded by the amazing people who back it over on Patreon. And this week's Patreon question is from Retro Respawn. And he asks me, is there any console out there that I regret buying? And I would say it's not so much a regret because I am a strong believer in the butterfly effect. So I don't know what would have happened if I didn't buy this console retrospectively. But I buy consoles so that I can play the exclusives that generation. And I bought the PlayStation 4, the Wii U and the Xbox One all for relatively cheap prices within the first year each of them was launched. But the problem with the Xbox One is it was the first mainstream console that I can remember that doesn't seem to have any exclusives that are worth playing. Like, what's the best it's got? Rare Replay? And can you even call that an exclusive when it's just a compilation of old games I have amongst my collection anyway? So the Xbox One was a huge, massive disappointment for me. I would have been better off buying an Atari Jaguar, because at least I could have played the first person shooter Alien vs Predator, which isn't on other systems. There is no exclusive that good available for the Xbox One, so what an absolute waste of money. What a joke. Yeah, cheerio.